Welcome to the beautiful country of Jordan. Imagine stepping into a land where history, culture, and adventure collide. From the ancient ruins of Petra to the breathtaking landscapes of Wadi Rum, Jordan offers an unparalleled travel experience. Whether you're exploring the vibrant streets of Amman, floating effortlessly in the Dead Sea, or uncovering the hidden gems of Little Petra, this guide has got you covered. Join us as we dive into the best times to visit, essential travel tips, and must-visit destinations. Get ready to embark on a journey filled with unforgettable moments and discover why Jordan is a traveler's paradise. If you guys are new here, we're Giselle and Steven, also known as the Lover's Passport. We have been to over 40 countries, and out of all of them, Jordan was one of our favorites. So with that, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe if you love to travel and you want to see more content. With that, let's go ahead and dive into the video. So when is the best time to visit Jordan? We would recommend visiting in either the spring or the autumn. Spring for them is going to be from March through May, and autumn is going to be from September to November. November to March is the rainy season there, and even though Jordan is in a desert, and typically when you think of it, you probably think it is very hot and dry, it isn't always like that. It does get very cold here. They do get flash floods, and they have to close a lot of the accommodations and different tourism places to visit, and it does get extremely hot here. So that is why we recommend visiting during the spring or the fall. Now, what's the best way to get around? We recommend 4 different ways. First one would be booking a tour. When we visited Jordan, we actually did book a Jordan highlight tour. It was 4 days, and we got to see so many incredible places in a very short period of time. So the first thing we would say is you can book a private driver. We went ahead and put our Get Your Guide link right over here. We absolutely loved our driver. We could not get enough of him. His hospitality, the way he took care of us, was amazing. So that would be our recommendation, because if you are planning on driving yourself, it does get a little dicey here. Everything that is a driving law here tends to be a recommendation. The drivers here can be a little crazy, and all of the signs are in Arabic. So if you are planning to drive, you will need to make sure you have your phone out so it can translate everything, or just know how to read Arabic. So if you guys end up not booking a guide and you don't want to drive yourself, the third way is using jet buses, JETT. These are great, and they do go from the major city centers to a lot of the tourism destinations. They are a great budget-friendly way to do it, but you do have to work around their schedule, and you can't be as easygoing with it. And the last way that we would recommend is just city buses or taking a taxi. This can add up and be a little bit expensive though. The reason that we loved our Get Your Guide tour so much was because we were with the same driver every single day. He accommodated what times and places we wanted to visit. Since we were photographers, some places we wanted to visit during sunrise or sunset, and he gave us so many recommendations. So would definitely recommend either looking at booking a few tours or looking at getting a driver like that. Next up, these are things you need to know before visiting Jordan. First and foremost, we want to make sure you understand Jordan is a safe country. Even though it is located in an area that is war struck and has lots and lots of other things going on, Jordan itself is very safe, and hospitality is what runs that. The culture in Jordan was amazing to hear from our tour guide. He was telling us that everyone there understands where they are located in the world, and they do a very, very good job of keeping the truth system. So if you see something that is happening, they're very good at reporting it immediately. It was actually rated as one of the top 10 safest places to walk around at night in. So we want you to understand just how safe it is. We did not feel unsafe at all from when we landed in the airport to Amman, going through all of the beautiful areas and even talking to a lot of the locals.
Next up on the list of things to know is that alcohol is technically legal, but it is very heavily taxed. And if you're visiting during the month of Ramadan, you're most likely not going to find it openly available. Outside of Aqaba and Amman, you're usually not going to find a place that has alcohol readily available to purchase. So keep that in mind if you are looking to drink on your vacation. This is probably not going to happen very often on your trip to Jordan. On a similar note, smoking is very prominent in Jordan. We were actually checking into a hotel, and for the first time ever, we were asked if we would rather have a smoking room because it's just such a norm there. They thought we were crazy people for wanting a non-smoking room. So just know in advance that it is a very prominent thing. And if you want a non-smoking room, make sure to tell your hotel that in advance. Next up, when it comes to water, either bring your own water filtration like water bottle or purchase water bottles while you are traveling throughout Jordan. My mom actually did get a little bit sick from drinking some of the local water there. She did catch like a norovirus, so just be very careful with your water intake there. Would definitely recommend having something like a Grail water bottle where you can filter it out yourself, or just sticking with purchasing the bottles there. Next up on our list of things to know before visiting Jordan is the language. Arabic is the official language, although you will find in most of these spots mentioned in the video that people will speak English, especially if you are going on some sort of tour. All the tour guides typically speak English, so that will be super helpful in getting around. If not, I would still recommend downloading Arabic on Google Maps and just having that as a backup in the event that you will need it. But in places all over Petra and Amman, everyone spoke English that we ran into. So like I said, if you're in a tourist center, you can usually get by with English. Now, when it comes to packing for your trip to Jordan, you do want to be a little more respectful when it comes to your wardrobe. Since you are in the Middle Eastern region, the culture is a little bit different when you're comparing to places like the United States or Europe. So you are going to want to dress a little bit more modestly, especially if you are a woman. That being said, I just wore a ton of like long flowy linen kind of things because not only was it like more respectable, but it was also pretty hot. So you want some nice breathable fabrics when you're packing out there. Typically, my mom and I tried to cover our shoulders out of respect and not wear anything too short when it came to like dresses or skirts or anything. We would have long flowy pants on or like a longer skirt or dress. Now, everyone's favorite topic, tipping. Of course, it is always changing from country to country. And although it's not customary in Jordan, it is always appreciated, especially in the tourism sector. So if you leave a tip for your driver, your tour guides, they will always appreciate it. Now, that being said, there is some tourist traps where they're going to kind of pressure you to tip them, and you have to know that you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to. For example, in Petra, there's a ton of different people trying to say you have to give them money in order to let you go up to certain viewpoints in Petra. That is false. You do not have to pay them, but they might be a little aggressive. So just keep that in mind. Percentage wise, it's typically recommended to tip around 10%. Same thing, 5 to 10% at restaurants if there's not already a service charge included in your bill. Now let's get into visas. So this is more of a logistical question upon arrival. Now, we're speaking from experience with US passports. We were able to either get a visa in advance or on arrival. We decided to do it on arrival. It costs $57 per person to get a visa on arrival. It was a little cheaper when we visited a couple years ago, but that is the current price today. And you'll go through a little questionnaire when you land. They'll give you this giant like sticker in your passport and you'll be good to go. We flew into Amman and the whole customs process was pretty simple. Also, when it comes to navigating the airports in Jordan, one, if you're traveling with camera gear, they're gonna be really scrutinous of this. We had this similar experience when we were in like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. People are just very questionable of why you have all this camera gear if you're going as a photographer or a blogger or content creator. So keep that in mind. The second we mentioned, oh yeah, we do like YouTube and Instagram, they let up a little bit, but sometimes they just are a little paranoid of why you're carrying so much camera gear. So when we were going through security, we'd have to go through security like 3 or 4 times before they would let us go through. Also, when you're arriving at the airport, I was always that person who's like, international flights, get there 3 hours early. They won't even be at the stand 3 hours early. early to let you check bags and stuff. I think they opened up directly at 2 hours before, so you don't have to get there 3 hours early. Now, last but not least, before we jump into our 4-day Jordan highlights itinerary, should you get the Jordan Pass? This kind of goes along with the topic of visas because the Jordan Pass does include your visa costs on arrival, and it also includes entrance to a lot of the most popular attractions around the country, like Petra, for example. So it really depends on one, how long you're staying in the country, and two, if you're booking any tours in advance that would already cover those expenses. We opted not to do the Jordan Pass because we were only staying in the country for 4 days to do all of the highlights. We knew in advance that we were just going to pay out of pocket for it, and it still would have been about the same price as the Jordan Pass, if not a couple dollars cheaper. So just do the math before you go to see if you're staying for more than 4 days, if it would be worth it. Sometimes it might be, especially if you're traveling in a larger group, but for us this time, it was about the same. So just crunch the numbers before you decide to invest in it. And with that, let's jump into the itinerary.
So we did this itinerary in 4 to 5 days. You can obviously make this much longer or much shorter depending on how long you were in Jordan. But since we were doing a Get Your Guide tour, we did follow along with the tour as best as we could. First off, we flew into Amman, Jordan. This is the capital of Jordan, and we didn't spend too much time here, but we did have enough time to go and explore the Rainbow Street. If there's one thing that we recommend doing, it's going out, having dinner in the Rainbow Street, seeing the atmosphere, the bustling culture. It was beautiful to enjoy, and the food was delicious. The one spot that you need to check out in downtown Amman is called the Hashem restaurant. There probably will be a wait. You're probably going to end up sitting with other people, but it was such a fun experience. We got put with 2 other travelers, sat there and got to relax and enjoy the incredible food. Once we left Amman, we headed over to the Dana Reserve. This spot will blow your mind. This is the largest nature reserve in Jordan. It was beautiful to see. It almost looked like it was a gorgeous canyon looking down. We didn't get to spend too much time here, but there are tons of hiking trails around the area.
We are at the lowest viewpoint here in the historic village of Dana or Dana, and here is where you would start taking down the road to start hiking. And if you want to hike in this area, you do need to hire a local tour guide in order to be allowed to hike. It is a historic area, so it's all preserved, so you would have to arrange that ahead of time. So there's tons of different hikes available out here that you can see at the visitor center. They have different maps and availability. One that we had seen ahead of time was the Guer Trail. I think I said that right. And it will take you about 6 hours to complete, but it takes you down into this beautiful desert oasis, lots of palm trees and slot canyons. So we unfortunately don't have time to do it today, but if you guys are looking to hike, that is one that we'd recommend.
And it does have a beautiful red rock that if you were here for a sunrise or sunset, the view would be stunning. There are tons of different ways to see wildlife here as well. So if you guys are planning a longer trip to Jordan, we would definitely recommend spending at least 1 night in this area. After we left the Dana Reserve, we headed over to Shobak Castle. This castle was built by Crusaders in 1115. That is almost a full 1,000 years old. The castle was on this beautiful hill. We had insane views from all around, and it was cool to just have a little spot, stretch our legs as we were heading and getting closer to Petra, the most famous spot in Jordan.
What is this, Han? Someone's alive. Oh, there she is.
Before we stopped and went to the main section of Petra, there's actually a little hidden gem called Little Petra. This area you don't need more than 1 to 2 hours to explore, and it looks very similar to Petra, just on a smaller area. This was the suburbs when Petra used to be a real city and had thousands of people going to it. It was where the horses got fed, it was where a lot of trading happened, and it was a cool little introduction before we visited the main treasury and monastery in Petra.
So they say that the best view of this whole area is up there. But what they won't tell you is that you have to pay more to go up there. So even if you already pay for a guide, you don't have to pay more if you want to go all the way up there. This is still a really nice viewpoint over here. So basically any additional add-ons you have to pay extra for, / if you haven't visited Petra yet, they will try and convince you to hire them there too.
Now, I would not recommend visiting here after you go to Petra, just because everything is like on a smaller scale. It's like the difference between if you go to Disney World and then if you go to Disneyland. Disneyland is so much smaller than Disney World. That's kind of how I would compare Petra and Little Petra, but it is still definitely worth it to check out.
So after visiting Little Petra, we checked into our hotel right outside the entrance of Petra, which is a new 7 wonder of the world, and by far our favorite thing on this entire entire itinerary. And we checked into the Edom Hotel, which is a 3-star hotel. It was nothing super fancy, but it was nice because they did pack up little lunches for us to take into the park the next day. So we appreciated that. And this was all included in the cost of our Get Your Guide tour. So we didn't choose the hotel. The tour company we went with ended up booking all of that. So if you're like super picky with hotels, I wouldn't necessarily go through like a tour provider like we did, but it was just easy because we didn't have to do any of the planning. So just as a disclaimer on that. So if you have the Jordan Pass, you'll be able to have free entry into Petra. If not, you can buy your tickets there. They have a ton of different lines that you can purchase them through. You can also go and explore on your own, or you can hire a tour guide. We ended up hiring a tour guide who just came along with us, like a private one. If you don't have one, there's usually tons of them lingering outside of the entrance trying to get you to hire them. Make sure you hire a reputable one because there's a ton of people that like pretend to be tour guides and then they rip you off and they scam you. So we would recommend it mainly because you get a lot more out of your trip there than just like going and taking a photo. Going with a legitimate guide really gives you an understanding of the history of the Bedouins that lived there and the architectural history of the Sick and the treasury and all of the other amazing viewpoints throughout Petra. Some other things to note before we even get into the spots to hit is you will see some animal cruelty here. It is very unfortunate if you are an animal lover. These animals are not treated very well, so we would really highly advise against using the donkeys or the mules. Now you can either enter Petra during the daytime or at night. So the first time we went in with our tour guide, we went as soon as it opened, right when the gates were up, and that was the best decision because it was much less busy early in the morning. We basically had all the famous spots to ourselves, which is crazy because our tour guide showed us videos of people visiting Petra in the pre-COVID era and it was like shoulder to shoulder packed. So if you want a nicer, less crowded experience, go right when the doors open. It's about a 30-minute walk to the first famous viewpoint, which is the Sick. If you've been to Zion National Park in the US, it's super reminiscent of that. It's like this beautiful, almost slot canyon, but not quite slot canyon, narrow entryway to the first, probably most famous viewpoint in Petra, which is the treasury. It is over 2,000 years old and it is a complete work of art. There's a lot of mythology around the creation of the treasury as well as some of the other carvings in Petra. So that's why we'd recommend hiring a tour guide and they can tell you all about it. There's a ton of really great photo spots if you're a photographer here in front of the treasury, whether you're down below or scaling up some of the cliffs on the side. Like I said, you won't have to pay for people to let you pass and go up there. And then if you have the time to keep going and you're relatively in shape because it is a longer mileage and you're usually hiking in the sun and it's pretty hot, we'd also recommend hiking over to the monastery. It's very similar and reminiscent of the treasury, but there's way less people and there's a ton of other really cool stops along the way that are often overlooked by visitors and lots of little markets that you can go in and kind of go look at all the souvenirs and stuff if you want to do that. The hike to the monastery has over 800 steps, so there's definitely some elevation gain, especially in the middle of the day when it's exposed. So bring really good footwear and lots of water. And while you're going through on that hike, be prepared to see lots of people trying to sell you stuff. That's just how it works there. So that's kind of the highlights of going to Petra during the day. There is also a program called Petra by Night, which is offered every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And that gives you access to re-enter the park after it closes at nighttime and kind of see this little show, if you will. There's a ton of candles everywhere. It's a very interesting experience. They do some like chanting / singing. Everyone gets tea, but somehow we never got our tea, which was unfortunate. But was it worth it? That's something that we get asked all the time. Was Petra at night worth it? Because it is $24 per person. It's a quick 2-hour thing. It is a little bit of a tourist trap, just a little bit. If you're into photography, I think it's cool. You'll want to be one of the first people in the gate and get there pretty early so you can get cool photos, or be one of the last people to take cool photos of the they're not floating candles, but it has that effect of like floating candles in front of the treasury. So if you're a photographer, I think it's worth the $24. If you're not, you could probably skip it. If you happen to be there on a Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday when they're offering and you're just curious and you have nothing better to do, I'd say go for it. Day 3, it is time to head out to the desert. Wadi Rum is one of the most insane places I think we've ever visited. And by insane, I mean otherworldly and just magnificent landscapes, to the point where it's a huge filming location for a lot of major motion pictures like Dune, Star Wars, Lawrence of Arabia. Like, it makes sense why so many movies come out here to film, because it really truly is a magical place. The breathtaking Wadi Rum area is a 74,000 hectare protected desert wilderness area in southern Jordan, also nicknamed as Valley of the Moon, and this expansive protected nature area has some of the most dramatic scenery in all of Jordan. Now, this area is the tribal home to the Bedouins, which are the native people from Jordan. They're the nomadic people who would often move around the desert, and so you will often find lots of different little Bedouin villages throughout Wadi Rum, and you can actually go and stay in some of the Bedouin camps, which is what we decided to do on our tour, and do a little desert safari and stay and do a traditional Bedouin meal where they do an underground oven and they kind of teach you about the Bedouin culture. This is not somewhere you can go without a guide. You do have to book a guide. And so if you're not already on a tour like the one that we did, you will have to book one separately in order to do the safari and then also an overnight in a Bedouin camp. Most people will only stay in Wadi Rum for a day or two. Outside of that, you don't really need more than 2 days. You can drive around and see all of the highlights pretty quickly, and sleeping in the Bedouin camps, there's some that are like luxury bubble glamping kind of style camps, and there's some regular ones as well. The regular ones usually also offer both AC or no AC rooms, and the AC rooms are an upcharge. We decided to do that though because my mom wasn't feeling well from drinking the water on our first day of our tour. We stayed at the Mirage Wadi Rum camp, but there's a lot of different options to choose from, and we'll link some of our favorite ones that some of our friends have stayed at as well down below in the description box. And after you're all wrapped up with your time in Wadi Rum, you're going to be heading out on your last full day in Jordan, exploring the beautiful city of Aqaba and floating in the Dead Sea.
Aqaba is one of the most famous cities inside of Jordan. It is the gateway to the Red Sea, and it is where most of the Jordanians end up going for vacation. This reason being that it is a tax-free city in a lot of ways, and you can save 40% on alcohol, other things. It's great for scuba diving, kite surfing, getting out on the water. It has this beautiful blue water that you can go down, and a huge marine life, including a ton of different shipwrecks and different diving sites. So Aqaba is definitely going to be a spot that I would recommend after spending some time in Wadi Rum, and it really is a desert style oasis. After you spend some time in Aqaba, I would highly recommend checking out the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a world-renowned wonder. I would highly recommend going, relaxing in the Dead Sea. It is a great spot where you can enjoy the heat from the desert as well as enjoy the spa and the beautiful lake. Now, when you are in the Dead Sea, there are a few things that I want to make sure you remember. Number one, I would highly recommend bringing water shoes, just because the bottom of the Dead Sea has a lot of those salt crystals. It's not very comfortable to walk on, and even as you're walking closer to the Dead Sea, it starts to hurt the bottom of your feet. So definitely take that into account, as well as I would not recommend shaving 48 hours before you get in the Dead Sea, just because when you shave your face or shave your legs, it does leave little micro cuts on your leg, which will cause a lot of irritation and a burning sensation, and that's not fun. The last thing I would also recommend is when you are going, not to stay in for more than 10 to 15 minutes. Just because of the amount of salt inside of the lake, it will dehydrate you extremely quickly. So we would get in 10 to 15 minutes, jump out, put on some more of the mud rub, relax, rehydrate, and then we would go and jump back in. But when you are jumping in, we were there on a windy day, unfortunately, so there were like waves coming up and splashing us all over the place, and if that water gets in your eyes, it burns like crazy. So the last thing we would not recommend doing is jumping in the water, trying to dive. The people that did get splashed and got some of the water in their eyes were crying. You would have a stinging sensation, and they even have a little water station next to it, so that way people can just go and wash their eyes. That's how much of a problem it is. And once we spent our time in the Dead Sea, we drove all the way back to Amman, and that is where we flew out. If you guys want to do the exact tour that we did, once again, we'll put the QR code right here. We had the best time doing Jordan. We actually did this trip combined with our trip to Dubai, which we will be creating a full video on as well. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to see more epic destinations, travel itineraries, and follow along to see all of the different places that we go, make sure to give us a like and subscribe, and we're going to continue to do these fun travel itineraries. With that, we'll see you guys out there on the next adventure.